Welcome to WritersConnX Instagram Live interviews, where we meet some Wattpad writers who are out there making waves. I'm your host, Rodney V. Smith, comedy writer, Wattpad star, and Watty Award winner.
Wait.
What?
I feel like this is flipped here. I'm supposed to be interviewing you and introducing you.
Okay, fine. Go ahead.
Right?
Okay, fine.
I mean, that's what we're doing here, right?
Okay, fine.
Okay,
Tamara is
right.
interviewing me today.
So, Rodney's right. This is WritersConnX, and normally he is the interviewer, but today he is the interviewee, and I am the interviewer. I am the professional interviewer, which I used to be in my former life, but now I use my powers for good, like interviewing Rodney. So we're here. And thank you for all joining us. And I hope lots of more people join us. And I've been looking forward to this because I wanted to ask you lots of questions. I have a lot of questions about you, Rodney.
Well, I may even answer some of them. So let's see how it goes.
Okay. I just want to ask like a general question because I've been really curious about this. You have a background in TV and movies. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So tell us how you got into writing. And how you got, I'll get to the Wattpad part, but tell us how you got into writing. Did you write for TV and movies? Like, what is your background? I'm very curious about that.
It's a long process. I started writing comic books and short stories and everything when I was a kid. Went through a whole bunch of Stephen King novels and everything. Then when I was, I think, somewhere around 19, I met this producer from Canada. He'd done this film called The Naked City. And he was actually in Barbados doing some scouting and everything, and he was looking for screenplays. So there was this story that I'd been working on, and I said, you know what, this would be perfect for a screenplay. So he told me what we're looking for, and I went and in a weekend and wrote this complete screenplay of this entire story that I had written. And I think the speed of it, more than anything, completely blew him away because we were only talking about 2 days before, and yet there I was with a complete screenplay that I had literally just started. So he looked at it and said, okay, first of all, this is all around. Let me teach you how to write. So he introduced me to writing, actually writing screenplays. So I just took it, I just kind of threw everything into screenwriting at that point because it was exciting. It was brand new. It was a different way of looking at the world and telling stories. And so I got to learn screenwriting from not the regular way from another writer, but from a production. Damn, I forget what it's called. He does all the budgets for movies.
Oh, okay, right. That's interesting. So
yeah.
That makes sense because your book, from what I've read of your books, they are very visual. You do write your fiction like a screenwriter.
Yes, I do.
And so that's very intentional. That makes sense. And so did you later on go on to work in the TV and movie industry in Canada or in the United States? I know you've lived in various places and you're from Barbados.
Yes, in the United States. I actually left Barbados when I was 24, went to San Francisco and LA for a little bit, and I continued writing and pitching. And I was got into making short films with a couple of local filmmakers, but then the big change didn't happen for me in California. What happened was that I was working as a developer at a web company. And they decided to fire everybody in the San Francisco office. They bought the competition and said, we're taking 8 people with us. Who's coming? So I raised my hand and I moved to Houston, Texas with them.
Oh,
where they promptly laid me off 3 months later.
Oh, well, that's not an experience. That's a bad experience.
Oh yeah, you know. But then what happened was that I actually fell in with a talent agency.
Oh.
And I decided, you know what? I've been doing this whole web design stuff for a little while. I'm doing web design for them, but now I'm also getting a little more involved in the casting side of things, and I'm seeing how things are going. I'm meeting other producers and directors, and that's when I said, okay, I'm going to try directing my own film. And So we started working on some stuff, and that's when I went and shot my very first movie. It was a feature-length film called Mort, about an assassin who was going to, it was a comedic assassin who was going to quit the job, and we sold it.
Wow, nice,
Yes.
nice. So, and you, when did you get the idea to write a book, and what was your first book? This was not your first book, I take it.
No, no,
Okay.
far from. My very first book was way back when I was like 15.
Oh.
Um, I was actually, I wish I had a computer at the time. I was actually working on my friend's computer most of the time. So we were working on two books. We were working on this thing in a swamp. I can't remember what it's called, but it was just this. It was this a kind of a co-production with us, and we were just writing together. And he was writing one chapter, and writing another one. But the one that I was really working on was the what was it called? I believe I called it The Strange Days of Joey Davis. And it was all written on my Smith Corona typewriter. So I would just there hammer out all these pages every day, and it was this great fantasy novel where this kid goes into another world, another alternate dimension, and he's trying to find his way back. And it was just this big epic story that I never finished, but I got to like I don't know, maybe like 300 pages in. It was just a huge sprawl. But then, due to the nature of typewriters, I lost it. So
Oh,
yeah, that is now relegated to memory somewhere.
oh
It's
my
in a
God.
binder somewhere out there. The pages slowly fading away.
Oh my God, that just kills me. It must just
Yeah.
slay you. Oh, so when did you get onto Wattpad? What year is your Wattpad anniversary, and how did you find out about Wattpad? I'm always sort of curious to know how people come to Wattpad.
Well, I never stopped writing. I had kept on writing screenplays, and but at some point, my best friend, the one I was writing the Swamp story with, he was doing NaNoWriMo one year,
Hmm.
and and he said, "Hey, you want to come do this NaNoWriMo thing with me?" So I said, "Yeah, sure, fine. What the hell am I going to write about?" And I started writing Bob. But this was
Oh,
like
okay.
this was back in 2009 or so.
Uh-huh.
I got onto Wattpad in 2012, but I had developed I had written most of Bob in that NaNoWriMo of 2009, and
Oh,
then
okay.
kept on writing at it while working on different screenplays and other
Hmm.
things. And what happens that because I was working on it, I was also talking about it to friends.
Uh-huh.
And I was in Toronto at the time, and my friend Carrie comes up to me and says, you have a book you're always talking about. I have a perfect place for you. And she sent me the link to Wattpad,
Oh, wow.
and
Okay.
and and the question that they asked me was like, is your book finished? So I lied and said yes, because I figured
Oops.
I could post the chapters and finish
Right.
it as I was posting.
Right.
So
And here
yeah,
we are.
yes indeed.
So tell us about Bob, because Bob is this really interesting. Actually, let me do a dramatic reading of the back cover copy. Vampiring is hard. Things Bob has on his checklist when he accidentally becomes a vampire. Forget everything he knows about vampires. Don't get brutally murdered by vampires. Apparently, there are vampire laws, and Bob, a young, romantically challenged black man living in Toronto, never got the guidebook. Even though it's not his fault that he's broken every rule, a secret vampire society is hell bent on giving him a more permanent death. With the help of his best pal Claude, Bob tries to stay alive and hopefully turn around his screwed up existence in the process. So tell us about Bob. What kind of guy is Bob?
Uh, Bob is uh, Bob is the sidekick. You have a movie, and you have the main protagonist who's out there saving the world. He's doing everything he can to be a good guy, and you have the sidekick who comes in occasionally, makes a couple of jokes. He's asleep on the couch, he does his thing, but the job is up to the job is up to the protagonist. Our protagonist is Claude, and he's out there saving the world, but we're actually following Bob. And Bob is, well, he's bumbling through life and generally making a mess of it. but he's
We're
just
all
trying.
Bob, really.
Yes, we're Bob. This is a vampire story told from the guy who should not be the vampire. If anything, Claude should be the vampire, but we got Bob instead.
Right. He's not sparkling. He's not like super, super sexy. Like he's not like Edward Cullen vampire.
Yeah, he's not a hunk of Burning Man meat.
Right. Exactly. Does he have abs?
He has a definition of abs somewhere there. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, but not like a 6 or 8 pack.
No,
Okay.
that's all Claude.
So, were you influenced by any other vampire media, any other vampire books or movies or TV?
Well, when I started to write it, it was kind of a bit of a backlash against Twilight, because
Okay.
Twilight had come out and vampires were so sparkly and everything, and
Right.
she was taking a lot of the vampire myths and really using them. And my approach was, okay, to be the anti-Twilight, what I have to do is make a vampire who's completely rooted in reality and in what can I say? Oh, physics. Basic physics must work. That means no flights, no weird stuff that has no meaning, like no biting somebody and they become a vampire. There has to be a process. So it got me really thinking about the biological processes and everything, all the boring stuff that
Right.
has nothing to do with real vampires, but how vampires would be if they existed in our world. And
As somebody who's working on a vampire novel, that is kind of the conundrum of the vampire novel, is how you're going to lay out that vampire world and like the vampire canon. And
I wrote most of that.
It's hard. It's like, how does it really work? Is it like a blood disease, or are they magic, or are they real people? And I find that really, I'm not normally a paranormal reader or writer, so it's been very eye-opening to me. I found that process very difficult.
Well, yeah, I did as well, but you know what? I just had to figure out. I have to put my own spin in it. I have to really develop it and make it make sense in my world, so that I could actually make fun of it. And so if I actually were to break the entire plot down, whatever happens, it's really not funny. It's all drama, and it's this very serious thing. It's Bob's voice and his perspective on it that actually makes it funny. You know, then plus all the swear words.
And what about, he's a black man and he's a vampire. Talk to us about that. Talk to us about how that influences who he is as a character as well.
Well, he's already an outsider from for being a vampire, because he was not chosen. In this world, vampires have to be chosen, and since he was not one of the chosen ones, he is looked down upon, and so he has kind of that whole outsider in this world of vampires, even though all vampires are not pale and white. They are they're Egyptian, they're Persian, they're Indian, they're black. They have so much variety among them. So Bob is not coming in this as a black man, like, hey, I'm a black man, and oh, wait a minute, I'm not the only minority here. The minorities are all there. They're all represented, but he's now has the disadvantage of being this accidental vampire. So he has no castle, he has no stupid riches, and well, yes, he does brood a bit, but that's just because he's broke.
I see. Okay. And talk to me a little bit about the process of writing the book on Wattpad. You've written it, you've rewritten it, you've released it in hardcover. Maybe talk to us a little bit about that process, because you've done a few things that are a little different than other people, I think, on Wattpad, especially in terms of putting out a hardcover book and rebooting it a couple of times and editing it. Talk to us about that process.
Well, you know, one of the good things about Wattpad is you can always go back and change things. You can go back and revisit and completely rewrite your story to make it make more sense, or just to make it be better. Bob blew up sometime in 2013 or so, and all of a sudden all these reads started to come in. So all of a sudden it was up to 500,000, and the reads start to go up and up and up, and I couldn't believe it at the time. So during that whole time, I was writing the next book in the series, and it was just a complete. It was a follow-on from what happened in the first book. It was just so much going on. But when I finished writing that book, it just was a different book, and it was a different style than what I had actually written.
Mm-hmm.
So I just said, hey, I want to go and publish this. So I got an editor. And actually, you know what? That's a lie. I decided I wanted to pitch it first.
Oh.
So since I'm in the movie industry, I decided I wanted to adapt it, and the best person to do that was myself. Right. So I started to break the book down into all of into the actual movie scenes and everything, and it didn't make sense. Oh. The story was all over the place. The timeline was jumping there. How did
you break it down? Did you use any sort of program, or did you use note cards, or how did you physically do that?
Experience. I had about 10 years of experience in the movie industry at that time, writing screenplays, and when the actually note cards did come into play, because I had to write down the scenes and try to figure out the whole timeline. But then I had to write what story there is, and what movies force you to do, especially screenplays, is for you to tell the story you're trying to tell. So it's not about the importance of plots or whatever. It's like, what is the story? And
that's really interesting.
Yeah, and
because you're not really talking about like backstory or any of the fluff or any of the description. You're really just telling the story.
Yes. And what I figured out during this process was that I had 3 books, not even 2 books. I had 3 books written in this very first thing. So I had to say, okay, what am I going to include? What am I going to take out?
Oh.
So the screenwriting process really brought that home. And it was just, even after I had sorted out, it was still just a mess with the time jumps. So after that, I hired an editor, and we worked for about a year just revising the story. It went from, the original was You Might Be a Vampire. The rewrite came out as I Might Be a Vampire.
Right.
And that's a version that is currently living on Wattpad. Anybody who read the 2012 version will not recognize the current version, because it did change a bit. But then I had to be a little. I actually I put that out in hardcover and softcover on Amazon. But then when I was talking to Wattpad HQ, Tom there was he's absolutely brilliant in pointing out some of the how stories work and what really works on Wattpad. And I had pitched it to Tom to be part of the Page Stories program.
Right.
And the coverage he sent back pointed out a lot of flaws, that I was still telling 2 stories. The time jumps were still all over the place. And he actually asked me a question. It's like, what story are you trying to tell with this? So I decided,
which is a really good question for anybody to ask. You know, what story are you trying to tell? I mean, that's what every author needs to ask themselves. What story?
Yes, indeed.
You know.
Yeah, no, because we know all of the details, and it's in our heads. And this is one of the things that my new editor Deb actually forced me to think about is that she would challenge me. She would ask me, what is the point of this sentence? Does this even occur? Why is he doing this? And then we would go into this long discussion about why Bob did that, and she's like, well, that's not on the page. You should write that.
Right.
So I would actually have to end up doing that.
Do you consider this high concept? Because I would consider this to be pretty high concept.
Oh, it's very high concept. It's just I think people get a little bit confused because Bob swears a lot. So like every other paragraph, there's this straight edit that I do. I don't just write everything straight. I will write it, try to get the voice of Bob, and then when after it's been edited, I will go through and add all of the fucks and all of the shits and everything, because this is Bob's voice really adding things. So whereas people are taking away some of the swearing, I'm adding the swearing, because swearing makes everything funnier.
It really does.
It lends a different perspective.
Do you see this? Would you, in like the perfect world, would you see Bob as a movie or as a long-running TV show, or like a Netflix show?
This one, How Not to Vampire, was conceived specifically to be a Netflix series. It is written like a Netflix series. It even ends like a Netflix series.
Gotcha. Okay. Now I wondered about that.
I remember for the original series, I had actually completed 3 books. There was the first one, then there was So You what's it called? So You Might Be Human. Sorry, So You Used to Be Human. Then I came back with a second book for in between So I Might Be a Vampire and So You Might Be Human. So now there's So I'm a Vampire, now what? And then there was a 4th one that I had started, had this brilliant scene that I cannot wait to get back to with Bob and the priest. And
oh my God.
Yeah, I would tell you about it, but spoilers. But,
well, let's talk about another one of your books that I've read, The Canefield Killer. And I have to say, I used to be a reporter and I used to cover crime. And I have to say that you really captured the crime genre. I know that Bob and vampires are your love, but your true talent may be in hard-boiled crime fiction. And honestly, I was so impressed with that book. And I had to put it down at a couple of moments because it was really it was very intense. Like, I really felt like I was covering a crime scene while reading that. And I loved the whole premise of that it was set in Barbados, and it was about a man a detective in the Pacific Northwest, who then goes to Barbados, where he's from, and he has all of these sort of feelings about going home, as one does. And then he investigates murders, and it was very intense. And I'm wondering if you're going to write more in that genre, because I think you should.
Yeah, that was written in a very dark time, and it actually came out of a conversation that me and my best friend had when we were like 17 or so. Just one of those conversations, like, what would happen if a serial killer actually started killing in Barbados? And but we found out later that there was an actual Canefield killer in the 1970s, early 80s, 70s.
Oh wow! Wow.
Yeah, so we actually kicked the idea around for a little bit, and then actually started writing it. So I had to stop writing that book a couple of times because it did get pretty dark, and some of the research we had to talk to actual cops and look at all crime scene photos and everything. The reason that a lot of it feels so authentic is that it is.
I completely got that. And I don't know if you've ever read Kathy Reich's Deja Dead.
Oh no.
It's set in Montreal, actually, and it's the book. It was published years ago, maybe 93, the early 90s, and it's the book that the TV show Bones was based off of.
Really?
She's a forensic investigator, and she looks at bones and the forensic, but it really gave me those vibes. And that's like a story crime procedural book. And I was very struck with the way you wrote that book. But I get it. Like, I get that writing crime fiction can be really heavy and really hard on the psyche too.
Yeah.
So I don't know the answer to that, but man, you're really good at it. And the idea that it was set on Barbados, I've been to a lot of islands, and that is really the last thing you think of is, I mean, obviously it's a place, there are places like anywhere else, there's people like anywhere else, but the idea that it's isolated is really even more terrifying, oddly, than anything else.
Yeah, because it feels, Barbados will feel so familiar to a lot of people who go
Right.
and visit there for the first time. There's nothing really out of place or anything. It's
Right.
like coming from a first world country to a first world country. It's
Right.
just a tiny, tiny little
Right.
island.
It's an island. I mean, and islands are very isolated. And if you think about that sort of too long, it's sort of spooky.
Yes, it can be. I'd
Yeah.
actually started writing the sequel to it a couple of years ago, but at that time, the one of the first investigations that was going to trigger him going back to Barbados was this mass killing, and at the same time I started writing that, there was a mass shooting, and I
Oh.
couldn't do it again.
Was it in Toronto? The one in Toronto?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, I came up there for that actually.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
not. I just couldn't do it. I retreated back to Bob because Bob is fun. Period.
Right, right. No, I get it. I totally get it. I mean, you know, my best friend thought that I would when I wrote fiction, I would write, like hard boiled crime, like something really, you know, edgy. And I have not been able to. I write cozy mystery and I write romance, and I want things to end happily. I want there to be like warm fuzzy and kisses and puppies, and I can't. And especially in this climate, post pandemic, post Trump, post all of that, it's so hard to think about writing something that heavy.
Yes, you have to have that separation between reality and what you enjoy, and
Totally.
bringing that in, no.
Right. Totally.
But
Totally.
the good news is that there is a sequel to Canefield Killer coming.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with mass shooting, so that takes care of that.
When
It's
will
called
we see that?
it's called the Mockingbird Murders, and I'm scheduled to start releasing it sometime in this summer.
Oh, that's great news. That's really awesome. I
Yeah,
love
but
that.
I must warn you, I am a completely different person now than I was when I wrote the Canefield Killer, so it's gonna be different.
Right. Well, I can also imagine you're a father, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I can also imagine that writing books like that hit differently when you're a parent.
I can't even watch horror movies anymore. The horror movies that I used to enjoy as a kid, as a younger man, they freak me out now. I see something and it's involving a kid or something, and it's like, oh my God.
I know, right?
Yeah, my brain has literally changed.
That's so fascinating. So what do you get inspired by? What are the books, movies, TV? What are you inspired by right now? What's inspiring you in this moment?
You know what? I really don't know. I have to go and refill the well every now and then.
Right.
Lately, I've been reading a lot more Terry Pratchett, mainly because it's a different world, and it's just such, it's light, but it's a deep look at the world and people's relationships.
Right.
So that kind of always gets me going. And
Netflix, have you binged anything on Netflix that's good?
Oh, yes, I just finished watching Arcane. That was brilliant.
Oh.
Yeah, it's based on a game, League of Legends, of all things. But there was this, there's an absolutely brilliant show, Arcane. I did just finish watching Reacher on Amazon Prime, and that was also good. And that's actually what got me really thinking about how I can make it the Mockingbird Murders again. And yes, I still do write screenplays.
Yes, I was going to ask we have a question. Do you still write screenplays?
Yes, but screenplays, I've actually moved on to focusing on web series. So I've been writing more web series recently.
Oh, nice, nice. Do you think there's a place on Wattpad for screenplays, or do you think it's really not the format, the platform?
There could be, but just reformatting it for Wattpad is a pain. And screenplays have a very specific format, so you can't just throw a bunch of text and say, "Hey, this is a screenplay." No.
Right. What do you think about the future of fiction, especially genre fiction and serial platforms like Wattpad and traditional fiction and traditional publishing, indie publishing, serial platforms? Where do you think it's all headed?
Well, it's all changing. Wattpad is kind of like leading the change in the digital era. People are still reading traditionally published books because there's something you can't get away from with holding a book in your hands. So there is a good place for traditional publishing. It's just how they are relating to writers and trying to still offer a viable product, because now there's so many more books available, and it's an exciting time, but the process is taking a lot longer, and it's the relationship with publishers and their writers is the biggest thing that's going to change. Wattpad is really leading the charge in some of that with programs that they're introducing, and they with the competitors out there, it's kind of an exciting place to be. So
it is.
I have a lot of good feelings about what Wattpad is going to be doing. So you know, currently
I
I'm
agree.
what can I say?
I agree with you. I mean, and I think that the thing that Wattpad has that other publishers don't is that you do meet people and you get to be really close with, like, we've gotten close, like other people, like the whole group of us have just gotten close in a way that I think we're on this new journey together. It's not, it's like uncharted territory, and we're kind of forging a new path. And I love that, doing it together. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that Wattpad introduced was that sense of community, that sense of belonging, and that you're not doing it alone.
Yeah.
So us being able to meet, even though you're in Florida, I mean in Toronto, and just meeting on Discord and talking and developing a relationship with all of these different writers over the past couple of years has been tremendous. And I know if I had this community back in 2012 when I joined Wattpad, it might have actually shaped a lot of what I was doing a lot differently, because we have people that we can ask for advice. We have people that to encourage us, and it makes the biggest difference.
Oh, I think we have a question. You wrote a short story about a serial killer who followed his prey. I think it was his neighbor on a bus. It's been a while since I've read it. Are you going to do any more with that?
I had been thinking about folding that into the Mockingbird murders, but no, that was just written as just a short, just to get it out of my system, because that was the one that got away. But
well, it's funny how that snippet can stay with readers, so maybe you might want to think about expanding it.
Yeah, I think it was the whole art of surprise, because it was such a good gooey, good feel good story, where you had this whole idea that, oh my gosh, they're falling in love. He's such a good guy. Oh my God, he's not. He's a monster.
Oh my gosh, that sounds kind of terrifying, but good.
Yes. Well, good. It was a slice of life. It was a slice of life thing where it wasn't like too far out there.
A slice of serial killer life.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Okay, so you've got the Canefield Killer follow-up coming this summer.
The Mockingbird Murders.
What else have you got coming up?
Well, we've actually started doing a re-release of How Not to Vampire on Wattpad. It is still available on Amazon in hardcover, and I believe there's soft cover there as well. And it will stay there. We've actually worked out a deal where Wattpad has the digital rights, so they're going to re-release all of How Not to Vampire season 1, and then in summer we're going to go straight into season 2. So I know a lot of people out there have actually read season 1 and season 2. There's some bonus chapters in season 1 that coming up where we actually get to see more of what Claude has been up to, because nobody ever gets to see what Claude has been doing, but they're always asking. So
you're writing bonus chapters from the point of view of Claude?
Oh no, it's still from Bob's point of view.
Oh,
so it's just Bob talking about Claude.
Oh,
so yeah, it's really weird, but I actually found a way to make it work. Bob is just like, well, okay, so while I'm out there getting drunk, Claude was doing this.
Oh, okay, all right, nice.
Right, so so we're actually going to continue with more of those. The next bonus chapter is coming up where we actually follow Claude after he leaves Bob. So Bob is in the last chapter. Bob is currently chasing after this woman in a bar for a quickie downstairs in the downstairs bathroom. But now we're actually going to follow Claude. So it's like, before we get to the sex, here's what Claude's up to.
Claude's doing. Oh, that's funny. That's
Yes.
really funny. I love it. Well, thank you for doing this. I'm so excited, and I love talking to you, and we're going to have to do this again. I hope everyone picks up. Yes, you must read about Bob. This is Bob, and you can buy the hardcover on Amazon, and you can also read on Wattpad, the digital version. And I would highly recommend picking up all of Rodney's books because he's an awesome writer and he's an even better human being. And I love talking to him. So I'm so happy we were able to do this.
Well, thank you so much for hosting this interview, Tamara. Remember, we do have more of these interviews just with me as a host. I may get Tamara to come back as a host. Who knows? We'll see.
I'm happy to do it. I'd be happy to do it. I love interviewing authors. I think it's so much fun.
Excellent. But yeah, okay, so we do have more coming up. These interviews usually happen on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, but we do throw in the occasional odd interview here or there, like me. Yeah, these are actually going on every single week. We do have the WritersConnect panels. The next one is Pantsers versus Plotters, and it's a nice big fight. So that's coming up on that's on May 7th at 2 p.m. So keep an eye out for that.
And all of these can be seen in an archive on Instagram?
Yeah, on Instagram. And now I'm actually editing them and uploading them to our YouTube channel. The links are in the profile.
Oh, good. I love it. Okay. Well,
thank you. Anyway, keep an eye out for our schedule. And thanks again, Tamara, for hosting the interview.
Okay. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Well, for WritersConnect, I am and I still am. I was and I still am. Anyway, yeah, I'm Rodney. Bye.
Bye.